Hello everyone, welcome to the Senior Project Final Presentation for the EForT-EFDT Team. The team members for this project is Gianmarco Agostinone and myself, Raj Kapadia. The project owner and professor for this project is Masood Sajjadi. This project is part of the School of Computing and Information Sciences at Florida International University. So to start off with, let's take a look at the problem. Our project is essentially looking at automating Forex day trading. So Forex day trading is a form of trading that involves currency exchange. For example, taking the currency pair of pound to USD or euro to USD. And due to the high volatility of the market, as a day trader, this can be very time consuming and it requires a lot of attention in regards to how to analyze the market in order to actually get any profit by the end of the day. On top of that, you would require some knowledge on the tools that you're using to analyze the market, as well as understand what strategy to implement in order to satisfy the goals that you've set. So our project uses the MetaTrader 5 application. This application is a platform used to create algorithms that will essentially automate day trading. The MetaTrader 5 application in the end creates an expert advisor, which is a set of analytical tools that are used to analyze the market. And using these tools, the expert advisor has an idea of when to buy or sell based on the market conditions. So the expert advisor we created is modeled after the Gordon strategy. So the Gordon strategy is composed of three main indicators: the Bollinger Bands, the moving average convergence divergence, or the MACD, and relative strength index, or RSI. So using these indicators, the Gordon strategy expert advisor is able to analyze the market, and these indicators will basically send signals to the expert advisor when to sell or buy based on the conditions that have been set for each indicator. And I'll go into more depth on the next slide. So the Bollinger Band, it is an indicator that gives an idea of how the market is, how volatile the market is. So using the image on the right, you can see that there's an upper band and a lower band. And these bands are based off of the moving average. So if the upper band and the lower band are moving away from each other or they're expanding, that's a sign of expansion. And it is also an indication that the market is has a high volatility. On the other hand, if it's contracting or if they're coming closer together, that just means that the expert advisor, not the expert advisor, the market is less volatile. So basically, it gives an idea of how the market is trending. The MACD is used as a trend following momentum tool to understand the price trend, and it's based on it's a histogram that's created based on the exponential moving average. If the MACD is above the baseline or the zero line, that means that the price is trending upward, and if it is below the zero line, that means the price is going downward. The relative strength index, or the RSI, is also a trend following indicator tool, and this tool as well as the MACD are essentially like secondary tools used to verify whether or not a specific trend is happening. So they go hand in hand. So what the RSI does is it, based on the custom value, if it's above a specific value or below a specific value, it will determine an overbought or oversold condition. In the image on the left, you'll see that if it's above the 70 value, that's considered overbought. If it's below the 30 value, it's considered oversold. And using this, the expert advisor will get an idea of when to buy or sell. So to get an idea of how these three indicators work hand in hand, I will go to the MetaTrader 5 application and just give you a glimpse of how the expert advisor runs and how these indicators interact with each other. So right here, I have the MetaTrader 5 application open. The three indicators are divided into three separate windows. The bottom one right here is the MACD. The middle one is the RSI. And up here, we have the Bollinger Band as well as some other indicators. So the green bands are the Bollinger Bands. The orange bands are the Keltner channel. So the Keltner channel is actually another indicator that we implemented into the Gordon strategy, as we needed another method of detecting contraction in the Bollinger Band. So this is a good tool that we learned about and we were able to implement it. And the next thing we have is the blue line, which is basically the dark blue line, which is basically the trailing stop. The trailing stop just helps in getting a higher profit and as well as avoiding create losses. So as you can see, there's a red down arrow here. That's basically a sell. The blue arrow here is a buy, and the red dotted line here is basically a short. So that's how the indicator has, just based on the current trend, where the MACD is going down here, like where the MACD is a negative with a negative slope, RSI is below the 30 mark, and during an expansion, because all the signals are showcasing a downtrend, the expert advisor decided to sell and open a short position. So that's just a quick overview of the expert advisor itself. Down here, we also used a strategy tester. There are many components and many reasons to use it. Here, it just shows the backtest, or basically how the Gordon strategy performed under a specific period of time. So let's take a look at how we actually implemented the project. So we started off with not having much knowledge about Forex day trading. However, with that in mind, we had to begin with understanding the basic principles and what actually went into Forex day trading as a whole. Once we had that in mind, and once we learned about the basic concepts, we moved on to reviewing the previous semester's expert advisor. There's some wish list components, as well as some things that had not been implemented in the previous expert advisor, and so we basically built our expert advisor on top of theirs and modified a lot of things and to just optimize the existing expert advisor. So once we had an idea of how the previous semester's expert advisor worked, we went forward and implemented a Bollinger Band, the MACD, the RSI, and a few other indicators as well, such as the Keltner channel and the support resistance bands. Since all of these worked hand in hand, it basically was working throughout a course of like 45 days. So once we had these placed, we went on, and our final step was to use the strategy tester as a way to optimize the expert advisor. Once we had a set of inputs that we should use for our custom variables, we went on and implemented those inputs and created the expert advisor as our final product. So this is the NAT chart. It's just a list of how long it took for each component to be implemented. For example, the Bollinger Band took 45 days. Most of the signals took 45 days approximately. And it's just an overview of how long the project took as a whole. The UML case diagram is just it's similar to how I presented using the MetaTrader 5 application. However, just to go into more depth, when you start off the MetaTrader 5 application, you basically select an expert advisor, the currency pair you want to use the EA on, customize the inputs, and select time frame to run it on. Once this is set, it will initialize all the visuals of the indicators, and When it's running, basically what happens is each indicator sends out a signal when it satisfies the market condition. And once that's in place, the MetaTrader will update the server and this buy or sell signal will be displayed on the visual. This is our system design architecture. So at the top is the expert advisor, and right below is the four main indicators that we implemented: the Bollinger Band, the MACD, the RSI, and we thought of adding the support and resistance as a signal as well. It has an indicator below it, and the Bollinger Band has a Keltner channel indicator below it as well. Once those are in place, basically what happens is there's a condition for each, as I mentioned, there's a condition for each signal to satisfy, and if it's satisfied, the signal is sent to the EA. This is our UML sequence diagram, just an overview of how each class interacts with each of the other classes and how the expert advisor runs as a whole. So our application pattern is using a client-server pattern, client-server design, where the only time the MetaTrader 5 application client interacts with the server is when the expert advisor has to send a buy or sell signal. This is again similar to the above diagram. It's the UML system deployment diagram, and again there's a UI interface that interacts with the server and updates the UI according to the signal that's been sent. So this is our UML class diagram. As you can see, there are many different variables or parameters that are customizable for the user. There could be a time where, according to a different strategy, these parameters or these indicators may have different weights in the expert advisor. So if the user wants to change it, he or she has the ability to do so. So our expert advisor has a behavioral design pattern as well as a structural pattern. Now, not all the different types of pattern have been implemented within those two, but one of the ones that we adhered to was the composite pattern. So the composite pattern is basically an object tree in which the expert advisor is on the top. It's the root, and the leaves would be considered the indicators. So the expert advisor is heavily dependent on these indicators and their signals in order to actually make any trading decisions in the market. This is just an overview of our persistent data design. It heavily relies on the trade functions and especially the history. So for our MetaTrader 5 application, there's a list of security and privacy tools that they've enforced. And the one that would be of concern for us most is communication with the server, when to buy or sell. And of course, that is over a secure connection. So here's a quick example of one of our implementations that we did. So as I mentioned before, the Keltner channel was an addition to the Gordon strategy. And we use the Keltner channel to detect a contraction. And it's very important because during a contraction, there shouldn't be any trades because there isn't any actual trend that's going on. And with that, if, for example, if we were to trade during that period, it would be very unreliable in terms of not knowing where the trend is heading. And for that case, we basically use the Keltner channel to detect a squeeze. And what it does is that the Keltner channel is built off of the EMA, or the exponential moving average, and the average true range. And using these two, it basically creates bands. So once these bands are created, one way of detecting the contraction is that the Bollinger upper band and the Bollinger lower band will be within the Keltner channel. So as you can see the picture on the right, the Keltner channel, the orange lines are basically engulfing the boundary band. And same with expansion, it's the opposite. If the boundary band is engulfing the Keltner channel, there's an expansion. So for testing purposes, we relied heavily on manual testing and the strategy tester. The reason being is that in order to understand how our expert advisor would react to different market conditions, we had to run it on multiple time periods and see what patterns were most commonly used. Based on that, we were able to set certain rules and conditions for each pattern that we implemented. And based on that, the expert advisor was able to create better trades and better trading decisions. So here on, you can see that there are two images. One, the upper image is over a course of 1 month in 2018. The lower image is over a course of 1 month in 2019. So there's a huge difference in the total net profit and the number of trades and so on, only because of the different market condition during those two periods. We also used the strategy tester to optimize the expert advisor. So as I mentioned earlier, the class diagram has a list of parameters that are customizable. In order to determine which parameters or values are best for the expert advisor, we ran it through a genetic algorithm. What the genetic algorithm does is it just takes the combination of all these parameters and returns the best combination that is out there based on the test case that we've set. So for our case, for our expert advisor, we had our test case was to maximize profit, maximize the number of trades, and to have the least amount of loss ratio. And using that, we were able to get a set of values that we used for our expert advisor. So the expert advisor is a very useful tool in automating day trading. As I mentioned earlier, as a Forex day trader, it requires a lot of time and knowledge to understand how the Forex market works just on its own. And then on top of that, you have to come up with a list of indicators that will be useful for your strategy, and then understand how those indicators or how those patterns actually influence your decision making. What the expert advisor does is replaces any of the decision making process. It uses the same indicators, the same patterns that the trader has implemented, but the hard decisions are based on the expert advisor. And that is how the Gordon strategy actually automates day trading. It's using three of the most common indicator tools that are used to actually analyze the Forex market. On top of that, these three indicators go hand in hand. And I say this because, for example, the Bollinger Band is the primary indicator in the Gordon strategy, and the MACD and RSI act as secondary indicators, but they're very important because they actually verify whether there's a specific trend that the Bollinger Band is going into. And using that, it's easier to make easier and less risky to make a bad trading decision. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you, however, want to reach out, the information is listed here. Also, we have our wiki page set up. If by any chance you do want to understand more about how these indicators work, there's a list of indicators and a very in-depth analysis of how it works, and also how we've actually implemented these indicators into the expert advisor. So thank you.